outnumbered the MiGs. The I-16s would become an easy prey for the experienced Goering aces. The German invasion began on June the 22nd with massive Luftwaffe bombing raids. Airfields were primary targets. Airstrips and ground installations were wrecked. Among the hundreds of Soviet planes destroyed on the ground were many brand new MiGs never flown in combat. The air war proved that the Air Force pilots had not yet adequately mastered the MiGs. The fighters required new flying skills and greater accuracy from airmen accustomed to the simpler and slower Polikarpov planes. Yet unquestionably, aces could fight and win in their MiGs. Two special MiG-3 regiments formed exclusively from test pilots of the Air Force Research Institute were famous for their record kills. The regiments were the creation of test pilot Stepan Suprun, who commanded one of them personally. Brilliant ace Pyotr Stefanovsky headed the other. In late June 1941, these formations flew to the front. Suprun was shot down and killed after 4 days of combat. He was succeeded by his aide, Konstantin Kokinaki. For test pilots, with their extraordinary flying ability, the 109s were easy targets, especially at medium and high altitudes. But Soviet airmen noticed the MiG-3's serious liabilities. It had weaker firepower than the 109 and was slower at low altitudes. Luftwaffe pilots began to engage the MiGs in low-altitude combat, where they held a crucial advantage. Squadrons of MiG-3s were assigned to defend major Soviet cities against the incessant Nazi bombing raids. The MiG pilots found their planes were much more effective against bombers than against the 109s. The MiG's high service ceiling and rate of climb were decisive in night interceptor missions. The Mikoyan planes were responsible for more than half of the Luftwaffe bombers shot down over Moscow and Leningrad. One of the best Soviet aces, Alexander Pokrishkin, made his first kill in a MiG-3. In autumn 1941, as the Germans approached Moscow, the Mikoyan factory was relocated to Kuibyshev on the Volga. Production was resumed, only to be halted in December when Stalin ordered the engine manufacturing plant for the MiG-3s to convert to produce engines for his favorite aircraft, the Il-2 ground attack plane. "3,200 MiGs had been produced by that time. Simple to repair and maintain, some of them remained in service until 1943, flying in combat in Moldova, the Kuban, and the Crimea. In March 1942, the Mikoyan Bureau was given several old industrial buildings in Moscow. The construction of the new facilities began in April. Despite the difficulties caused by the two relocations, Mikoyan and his engineers continued their work on new and original aircraft. In 1941, they built the Dis-200, a twin-engine escort fighter with a range of more than 1,700 miles. It was successfully tested, but remained experimental. Although MiG-3 production was halted, Mikoyan continued to improve the fighter. At first, he equipped the plane with the respected Shvetsov Asha-82 air-cooled engine. This propulsion unit powered the Lavochkin La-5 fighter, triumphant over Stalingrad. Mikoyan's craft, with the Shvetsov engine, the I-211, was built in 1943. Although it performed well, the Lavochkin fighter with the same engine was already in service. Only 10 I-211s saw combat. A succession of high-altitude interceptors followed. Improved engines allowed these planes to reach speeds of 450 miles per hour and service ceilings of up to 48,000 feet. They had pressurized cockpits, bladder fuel tanks, and 4 cannon armament. Although these interceptors were never manufactured for general service, their new features were incorporated on post-war jet fighters. Piston engines gradually lost their appeal, as aircraft designers realized that the propeller posed an insurmountable obstacle, prohibiting piston-engined fighters from flying faster than 550 miles per hour. Although not yet perfected, the jet engine had a far greater potential. Mikoyan and Gurevich decided to test the jet engine in flight. In March of 1945, their I-250 fighter, powered by a combination of piston engine and turbojet, reached 515 miles per hour. Higher speeds needed new aerodynamic configurations. In 1945, the Mikoyan Bureau built the MiG JET, a light wooden plane. Test pilot Alexei Grinchik was the first to fly this unusual craft, incorporating 4 radical innovations: a swept wing, a pusher prop, canard control surfaces, and landing gear with a nose wheel. The swept wing, first tested on this aircraft, was widely used on later jets. The only MiG 8 built was used as a mail plane. Meanwhile, the Mikoyan Bureau continued to experiment with new propulsion units. In 1946, the Bureau built the I-270 experimental interceptor, powered by a liquid propellant jet engine. The plane had an extremely high service ceiling and rate of climb, but only a 5-minute supply of fuel. After 2 prototypes crashed on landing, the program was halted. The more fuel-efficient turbojets would power the planes of the future. By the end of the war, designer Arkhip Lyulka had built the first Soviet turbojet engines, yet they were not reliable enough to be tested in flight. Instead, Mikoyan and his designers had to use BMW engines captured from the Germans. One engine alone could not produce enough thrust, so the initial plan envisioned the use of 2, mounted under the wing. Mikoyan opposed this drag-increasing configuration and suggested that the 2 BMWs should be placed inside the plane's body. Fitting the engines into the fuselage was a difficult task for the designers, but they were rewarded by the truly unique performance of their creation. The new turbojet fighter, designated the I-300, first took off in April 1946, piloted by Alexei Grinchik. The flight was successful, and Grinchik continued the testing. In July 1946, during its 20th flight, and while the plane was being demonstrated to the military, it suddenly overturned, dived, and crashed. The pilot was killed. Excessive vibration had caused aileron flutter, resulting in the catastrophe. The engineers reduced the vibration, and tests on another I-300 started a month later. Test pilot Mark Galai was given the assignment of reaching the maximum possible speed. His plane's elevators jammed during the flight, but he managed to land the almost uncontrollable aircraft. Problems with the tailplanes had caused the accident. After these were corrected, the plane became much safer. The I-300 became the first Soviet production turbojet fighter under the MiG-9 designation. Powered by 2 modified RD-20 engines based on the BMWs, The MiG-9 demonstrated at the Tushino Air Show in October 1946 could reach a speed of nearly 570 miles per hour and a service ceiling of 45,000 feet. It performed better than any other Soviet turbojet fighter.